The theme which runs across my work for, again, it's like 30 years now, is this issue of how do we create conditions in which people can be incredibly productive intellectually. And the thing I just want to point out is that people tend to think about knowledge workers as if that requires sitting in either a white smock or in front of a keyboard looking into a screen. But the reality is all work is knowledge work. I mean, just the simple act of carrying a couch from one room into the other so it's out of the way of painters is as much an exercise of brain and creativity, figuring out how to carry the couch, where to move the couch, how to avoid the door, how to avoid spilling the paint, etc. As much a brain activity as it is a brawn activity. The brawn is merely the expression of what the brain has figured out well. So that's been kind of the overarching theme of how do we create conditions in which we engage people's brains better than not. And this whole engagement of the brain is so critically important because most of the problems we encounter, and again, it could be across any societal or economic vertical and across any phase of value creation, is that we're engaged in a process of discovery. And what I mean by discovery, to distinguish that from search is that we know what we're looking for. Like the other day I was missing my car keys, but I knew what my car keys looked like, and I could go through a process of thinking about when did I last see the car keys, where did I likely put the car keys down, and then fairly methodically narrow down where I'd be looking for the car keys and find the car keys. And it was fairly mechanistic. It didn't require that much intellectual exertion. Discovery, on the other hand, is a very different experience, because discovery means that, one, we don't necessarily know what we're looking for, we don't know where to look, and we don't know how to find it. And so discovery involves an act of exploration into an area we don't know, taking that step from what's known and common and understood into the frontier, taking that step, having an experience, making sense around that experience, and then deciding where to take the next exploratory step and doing some more sense making. And what I've come to appreciate about the extraordinary organizations that I've had a chance to interact with and work with and study is that they understand that not only is the answer for the problems they're experiencing not yet known, sometimes the problems they're experiencing, even if they've been identified, they're not well described. And so they have to create these conditions in which individually and collectively, the exploratory, experimental discovery process is very, very energetic and very high yielding. Now, in terms of audiences, there are many audiences that benefit from having such an energetic discovery process. So there are those organizations which already have established business models. They have some sense of the portion of society where they're trying to deliver value. They have some sense of the form and the format and the content with which they have to deliver value. And then there's the issue of their internal operations and running all those things again, from upstream science and technology through research and design, through development and on, so that they're identifying important problems and generating useful solutions quickly. And so there's a whole scope of work targeted to those, which is sort of an internal focus of how we conduct ourselves inside the boundaries of our organization. Now, there's a related set of problems which affects everybody, and it's particularly noticeable for the military, but it's generalizable, which is periodically we have these inflection points or discontinuities in change. And certainly the military is going through this right now, where the last 40, 50, 60, 70 years going back to World War II was dominated by a business model, in a sense, that was informed by bipolar power struggles. And it was informed also by a sense that military relevant technology was developed primarily through the military industrial complex. That's no longer the case, right? And one needn't do much reading into the newspaper to realize we're in a very, very dynamic, multipolar political strategic world. But the other part is that all those actors, whether they're friend or foe, they're taking advantage of the variety and the cycle time of innovation that's in the commercial sector. Much like here at MIT and the surrounding environment of Kendall Square, they're taking advantage of those cycle times and trying to draw what's commercially generated and generated out of the research communities and put that into practice. And so you have these really strong discontinuities for the military industrial communities, where now they have to think about an operating environment which is much more varied and dispersed. They have to think about tapping technologies over which they have far less familiarity and certainly less control through budgeting and appropriations and that sort of thing. And so a good piece of the work we're trying to do now is describe what an innovation theory or an innovation doctrine would look like for that community. Now, it turns out the problems that they're experiencing right now in terms of navigating their way through a period of abrupt, significant, discontinuous change is not dissimilar or unfamiliar for those in the commercial world, where also the rate of technological change and the rate of business model innovation is far faster than it ever had been. So what we're finding is a remarkable cross-pollination of ideas and experiences and insights amongst the various .gov, .mil, .com, .edu communities.